So we're going to go back onto the script, and I'm going to ask this question about what have been your obstacles and challenges, maybe as an older writer, to getting the work done. And let's go to Susie first.
Well, I think certainly one of my obstacles was myself. And by that, I simply mean that as you're older and want to start something new, you really have to want to do it. At least I do. I really had to do this. I wanted to do this. And I think my greatest obstacle was me. So overcoming that fear and that hesitation, not listening to negative voices, and not only in my head, but those around me that might have said, yeah, you may not want to do this.
Mhm, mhm.
So those were probably some of the biggest obstacles I had. You know, we, I think there's an adage that says, you're as young as you feel. Well, that's true, except that the physicality of your body tells you things that it didn't tell you when you were younger. And you have
Hello.
you have to listen to that. But, I think as far as norms are concerned, I've always been someone that just didn't always go by the norms. I didn't start college until I was in my late 30s, early 40s, when all my kids were in school. I have been a late bloomer all my life, it seems like.
Hmm.
Um, and so this is probably nothing new for me. And I've gained confidence because I've been a late bloomer, and I've always had to, it seems like had to do that you just got to set aside those obstacles. So for me, it was probably internal more than external. I had a lot of family support, a lot of encouragement from my family. You can do this. I will say that I did not intend to write lesbian literature. I didn't even have it in my mind. And when I started writing and it turned out to be lesbian literature, I had a profound question in my heart about how my family was going to take this. And everyone was just so supportive of me and said, if this is your niche, if this is your genre, if this is what you want to write, then go for it, write it. And I have just never looked back since then. I've got, like I said, three books in a series that have already been done for both Strokes, and I'm working on my fourth one right now for them, which I've switched to historic drama, historic romantic intrigue. So it's a bit of a change, but it's the world is open if you're willing to pay the price to do it.
Right. Ellen, you didn't have time as kind of a challenge to you because you found a way to wedge in the work around your other responsibilities.
Yes.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Okay. Tell us about that.
Well, it's still a challenge. I still have a full-time job. I'm actually running for public office right now in my town. So, I hear a lot of authors say, well, I sit down at 6 o'clock in the morning and I work and I write till 8 o'clock, or I come home and, I sit down for 5 hours and this is what I do or whatever. I don't. I do it when I have time. If I find time on the weekend, I will write. If I find time in an evening, I will write. I have to be at work at 8 o'clock in the morning, so I'm not getting up early for that. No.
And does the inspiration hit at the same time when you have time?
No, it's usually, I'll be at work or somewhere and I'll just have an idea. Like I was reading a newspaper, McGee. I was telling McGee this story. I was reading a newspaper recently and there was this really god awful story. And I was like, you know what? I'm like, this is so dramatic. This is so creepy. I was like, you could make a story out of this. And so I started filling in the spots, and by the time you're done, you're like, oh, wait, this is a story I could do.
Right. Yeah. What
So
about you, Nance? Oh, I'm sorry. Sorry to interrupt.
No, go ahead. No,
I saw Nance shaking her head when you're talking about children and wedging in the work. What's your challenge?
Well, the ideas come when the ideas come. It might be the middle of the night. It might be when you're outside working in the yard or the garden, and you just have to, try and do some kind of mental note of remembering what the idea was, so that when you do get, my wife and I went for a walk yesterday, and I'm like, oh, if I forget to tell you, blah 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 blah, that's what I want for the end of this chapter, so I don't forget. So it's just, but the ideas come when the idea comes, just like Ellen said. You try and put it off to the side and and just do a keyword or something to remember so that
Yeah.
you can work on it when you do have time.
So that reminds me to ask this question. I'm going off the script again, ladies, just to let you know. So what about, we talked about a little bit about challenges and obstacles. What are the encouragements that you have that keep you going? Who wants to weigh in on that?
I'd be happy to.
Okay.
Well, I wrote down this, I answered this afternoon. Life experiences, I think, has been the biggest success part of this because I've had a child. I know the little people, I know the teens, I know the 20s, and now 30s, 40s, 50s. And life experience makes writing so much easier because you have a perception of all these different timelines in people's lives. And you have the experience to say, not everyone, a 50-year-old is going to handle something differently than a 20-year-old. So I think that's been one of my greatest successes in writing has been my life experience.
That's excellent. Makes a lot of sense. Catherine, I saw you raise your hand.
Yeah, I think that, well, first of all, I have the time because I started when I retired, but
Right.
um,
Well, what about encouragements? Where do you get that from? Where do you, the inspiration?
well, I have a lot of self-discipline. I mean, as I said, I was a workaholic and I think so. I get just a lot of pleasure out of the act of writing. Although lately it's been more torture, but usually I get a lot of pleasure out of that. My wife is very supportive and has always been my first reader. So she gives me good feedback, not always what I want to hear, but good feedback. So, and I think being in the writing community, I really, really love this lesbian writing community. I mean, I found it by accident by writing that short story. I had never read a romance or anything, a romance. And then through that, I found this lesbian community in GCLS. So I think that there's a lot of encouragement and support here. So I think that's what does it for me.
Anybody else want to tackle that one before we move on?
The best thing, the most encouragement I get from is, and I can still remember this first time too, is when you reach a reader and they tell you that you touched them in a way. And that is the most special feeling that and most compliment an almost an author can ever get, more than an award or anything. So to know that, I'm sitting here thinking, my gosh, I'm a 50-year-old and I got this 20-year-old emailing me how I touched their lives, and they're only 20s. They're still babies, and here I am in 50s, and so that was an experience that kept me driving to want to write.
That's excellent. And Susie, you had the encouragement of your family, which is a fabulous story.
And friends too, family and friends, but also other writers. It's important, writing is a very lonely process. You're alone in your room and you write. And so if you don't have other writers to talk with and to bounce things back off of, it can be difficult. But I've been very fortunate. I have a wonderful group of writers that have encouraged me and helped me along the way and been my mentors, and have, because starting late in life, a lot of people already have a leg up on you, and it's like you almost have to hit the ground running. At least I feel that way. You had to hit the ground running to get started. And if you start comparing yourself to everyone else, you're in big trouble. You can't do that. And so family, friends, and other fellow writers, I think, are just critical. And Ella is absolutely right. I went to a Pride event here last month. I sold out. I took a lot of books and I literally sold out by 5 o'clock in the afternoon. People were flocking to the tables because they had not seen, for some reason, they didn't have lesbian literature, and they didn't even know Bulge Strokes existed. So it was wonderful. What a great experience it was to have these women come up to you with tears in their eyes, and they'd want to look at the books, and I'd say, this is lesbian literature, and their mouths drop open and they got tears in their eyes and they hug the books. So it's just a wonderful experience.